Through the lens of Jungian psychology, the avoidant in your life is currently navigating what Carl Jung would call a profound confrontation with their shadow, the rejected and suppressed aspects of their psyche that include their capacity for love, vulnerability, and genuine intimacy. This isn't a simple relationship decision, but an existential choice between continuing their false persona of independence or integrating their authentic self that desperately needs connection. Jung would recognize this as a critical individuation moment where they must choose psychological wholeness or continued fragmentation. The shadow integration crisis. According to Jung, the shadow contains everything we've rejected about ourselves to maintain our ego identity. For avoidants, their shadow holds their neediness, vulnerability, and capacity for deep love, everything they've denied to maintain their independent persona. Your presence in their life has activated this shadow material, forcing them to confront aspects of themselves they've spent years suppressing. They're experiencing what Jung called shadow projection, seeing in you the very qualities they've rejected in themselves. The big decision they're making involves whether to continue projecting their disowned neediness onto others while maintaining their superior independent facade, or to integrate these shadow aspects and become psychologically whole through embracing their authentic emotional needs. The anima-animus confrontation. Jung taught that we all carry a contrasexual archetype, the anima, feminine principle in men, or animus, masculine principle in women, that represents our capacity for emotional connection and relationship. Avoidants have typically developed an adversarial relationship with this inner archetype. You represent a living embodiment of their anima/animus projection, the part of themselves capable of love, emotion, and relationship that they've rejected as weakness. Their big decision involves whether to continue fighting this aspect of themselves or learning to integrate it. The internal battle they're experiencing represents the classic Jungian conflict between ego consciousness, their independent identity, and the self, their complete psychological potential, including their capacity for intimate connection. The individuation journey at a crossroads. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming conscious of and integrating all aspects of the psyche to achieve psychological wholeness. Avoidants have typically arrested their individuation journey by refusing to integrate their emotional and relational capacities. Your relationship represents a critical juncture in their individuation process, where they must choose between continued psychological fragmentation or the difficult work of becoming whole. This decision will determine whether they evolve or remain stuck in immature defensive patterns. The choice they're facing is fundamentally about whether they're ready to sacrifice their narrow ego identity. Independent needs no one for their broader psychological potential, capable of interdependence and authentic love. The persona versus authentic self dilemma. Jung distinguished between the persona, the mask we show the world, and the authentic self, our true nature. Avoidants have over-identified with their persona of emotional strength and independence, while completely rejecting their authentic self that includes normal human needs for connection. The big decision involves whether to continue living from their false persona or risk the vulnerability of showing their authentic self that includes emotional needs, fears, and the capacity for deep love that terrifies them. This represents what Jung called a sacrifice of the persona, the necessary psychological death that allows for rebirth into authentic wholeness rather than continued performance of an idealized but incomplete identity. The transcendent function activation. Jung described the transcendent function as the psyche's ability to unite conscious and unconscious contents, creating new psychological possibilities. Your relationship has activated this function in your avoidant, creating pressure to integrate previously split-off aspects of their personality. The decision they're making involves whether to allow this transcendent function to operate, letting their conscious independence integrate with their unconscious neediness to create a new, whole relationship capacity, or to shut down this integration process through continued avoidance. This activation of the transcendent function explains why they're experiencing such intense internal conflict. Their psyche is trying to heal a fundamental split but this healing requires abandoning their current identity structure. The archetypal lover awakening. In Jungian terms, your presence has awakened the lover archetype within them, the innate human capacity for passion, connection, and surrender to something greater than oneself. This archetype has been dormant or heavily defended against in their psychological development. The big decision involves whether to embrace this archetypal energy and allow it to transform them, or to continue defending against it to maintain their current psychological structure. Embracing the lover archetype would require fundamental personality reorganization. This archetypal awakening explains the intensity of their internal experience. They're not just deciding about a relationship, they're deciding whether to allow a fundamental aspect of human nature to emerge in their personality, the choice between inflation and integration. Jung warned against both ego inflation, believing we're more than we are, and ego deflation, believing we're less than we are. Avoidants typically maintain ego inflation through their superiority about emotional independence, while remaining unconscious of their actual emotional needs. The decision they're making involves whether to deflate their inflated ego identity and integrate their true psychological complexity, including their need for love and connection, or to maintain their inflated independence at the cost of psychological wholeness, the Jungian verdict. From Jung's perspective, this decision represents a crucial test of their readiness for psychological maturation and authentic selfhood versus continued identification with a partial defensive persona. Jung would recognize that this avoidant person is at a critical individuation crossroads, where they must choose between the safety of their incomplete persona and the terror and wholeness of integrating their capacity for genuine love, a decision that will determine not just their relationship fate, but their fundamental psychological development and spiritual evolution.